March is Women's History Month, and this is day 4 of talking about strong women that you should know. Today we're going to talk about Elizabeth Blackwell. Elizabeth Blackwell was born in Bristol, England on February 3rd, 1821. Excuse me as I refer to my notes. Her family moved to America in 1831, but by 1837 her father passed away, and she and her mother and her 2 sisters went to work as teachers. That was the only thing that was an acceptable job for women in the 1800s. Elizabeth didn't want to do that, neither did her sister necessarily, but that was the only employment that they could find. A friend of hers was dying, and at one point she told Elizabeth that she felt like she would have had better care had she had a female physician. There were no such thing in those days. There were nursing schools and places that women could go. They could be midwives, but there were no such thing as female doctors at that time. In fact, there were very few medical schools. Elizabeth wanted to go to school, but even the men who were doctors at that time generally were not able to go to school because there were just very few of them. They had to apprentice under older male doctors, and any female who apprenticed under male doctors was never given a license to become a doctor like the men were, whether they had apprenticed or gone to school. Elizabeth kept applying, and with the help of a couple of men who were helping her learn about medicine and care and things like that, they kept mentoring her, and by 1847 she had been rejected by every medical school out there, except finally one day she got an acceptance letter from Geneva College of New York. Turns out Geneva College of New York, which was a medical school only for males, sent that letter as a joke. Miss Elizabeth accepted it and went to school to become a doctor. The school did not make it The school did not make it easy for her, however, and she was shunned not only by the townspeople who felt that she was not being what a woman should be, stepping out of her role, not being in the place that she should be according to society, but she was also excluded from labs and was told to sit somewhere else when she was in lectures. Elizabeth kept trudging on, and by the time she graduated in 1849, she had the respect of her professors because Miss Elizabeth graduated Geneva College of Medicine in New York, first of her class. While she was in school, she also published a paper on typhoid fever, and that was the first time that a paper had ever been published by a woman. Elizabeth could not find work much as a doctor, and finally ended up going in 1849, she moved to London and Paris and was still, went to work, but was relegated positions as a midwife or as a nurse. She moved back to New York in 1851, still could find very little work. Another interesting thing I forgot to add was before she even went to school, one of the professors actually suggested that she disguise herself as a male so she could get into school. Needless to say, that did not go over well. She thought about the how morally wrong it was, and also legally, what if she got caught and was putting herself out there to the world as a male instead of a female? What kind of legal trouble would that cause? Anyway, I digress. Let's move on. She moved back to the United States in 1851. Still wasn't able to find much work, but by 1857, she decided she had had enough, and she opened a clinic in New York, and it was called the New York Infirmary for Women and Children. They specialized in taking care of the destitute women and children that were in that area because they also needed care, and she knew that. So the clinic was opened in 1857, and then by she opened that with her sister who had followed in her footsteps. One of her older sisters had followed in her footsteps and was now a doctor, and another female doctor. And then in 1868, she opened the Women's Medical College of New York. Way to go, Miss Elizabeth. By 1869, she turned the hospital over to her sister to run that and had returned to London. By 1875, she was professor of gynecology at the brand spanking new London School of Medicine for Women. Miss Elizabeth died May 31st, 1910, at 89 years old. But today, day 4 of Women's History Month, we salute the first licensed doctor, the first licensed female doctor in the United States, Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell. Dr. Blackwell, we salute you.